Hi! Today we're going to be talking about measurement. My name is Alissa Stripling, and I am a district academic interventionist at Evanport Elementary. Today, we're going to be talking about measurement. We are going to be talking about the importance of a standard unit of measurement. We are going to read the story, How Big is a Foot? In this story, the king wants to make a birthday gift for his wife, the queen. But he thinks the queen has everything and doesn't know what to get her. Then he has an idea, and he decides he will make the queen a bed. At this point, beds had not been invented, so she didn't have a bed. But the king runs into a problem. He measures the bed using his feet and gives those measurements to the carpenter. But when the bed is finished, he notices there's a problem. Let's read to find out what the problem is in this story, How Big is a Foot? How big is a foot? Once upon a time, there lived a king and his wife, the queen. They were a happy couple, for they had everything in the world. However, when the queen's birthday came near, the king had a problem. What could he give to someone who had everything? The king thought and he thought and he thought until suddenly he had an idea. He would give the queen a bed. The queen did not have a bed because at the time, beds had not yet been invented. I wonder what she slept on then if beds were not invented. The floor? The couch? Who knows? So even someone who had everything did not have a bed. The king called his prime minister and asked him to please have a bed made. The prime minister called the chief carpenter and asked him to please have a bed made. A carpenter is someone who builds something. So the chief carpenter was the guy in charge of building things for the king. The chief carpenter called the apprentice and told him to make a bed. This is the apprentice. Usually, an apprentice is a young person who learns how to do a job from working with an older, more experienced person. So the apprentice is just a young guy who's learning how to be a carpenter. Look how small he is compared to the carpenter. How big is a bed? Asked the apprentice, who didn't know because at the time, nobody had ever seen a bed. How big is a bed? The carpenter asked the prime minister. A good question, said the prime minister, and he asked the king, how big is a bed? The king thought and he thought and he thought until suddenly he had an idea. The bed must be big enough to fit the queen. The king called the queen and he told her to put on her new pajamas and told her to lie on the floor. The king took off his shoes and with his big feet walked carefully around the queen. He counted that the bed must be 3 feet wide and 6 feet long to be big enough to fit the queen, including the crown, which the queen sometimes liked to wear to sleep. The king said, "Thank you," to the queen, and told the prime minister, who told the chief carpenter, who told the apprentice, the bed must be 3 feet wide and 6 feet long to be big enough to fit the queen, including the crown that she sometimes liked to wear to sleep. The apprentice said, "Thank you," and took off his shoes, and with his little feet, he measured 3 feet wide and 6 feet long, and made a bed to fit the queen. When the king saw the bed, he thought it was beautiful. He could not wait for the queen's birthday. Instead, he called the queen at once and told her to put on her new pajamas. Then he brought out the bed and told the queen to try it. But, what's wrong? The bed was much too small for the queen. Oh no! How did that happen? The king was so angry that he immediately called the prime minister, who called the chief carpenter, who called the jailer, who threw the apprentice into jail. The apprentice was unhappy. Why was the bed too small for the queen? He thought and he thought and he thought, until suddenly he had an idea. A bed that was 3 king's feet wide and 6 king's feet long was naturally bigger than a bed that was 3 apprentice feet wide and 6 apprentice feet long. I can make a bed to fit the queen if I know the size of the king's foot, he cried. He explained this to the jailer, who explained it to the chief carpenter, who explained it to the prime minister, who explained it to the king, who was much too busy to go to the jail. Instead, the king took off one shoe and called a famous sculptor. The sculptor made an exact marble copy of the king's foot. This was sent to the jail. Look, there's the king right there with his foot up, and the sculptor is using a stone to make a model of the king's foot. The apprentice took the marble copy of the king's foot, and with it he measured 3 feet wide and 6 feet long, and built a bed to fit the queen. The bed was ready just in time for the queen's birthday. The king called the queen and told her to put on her new pajamas. Then he brought out the new bed and told the queen to try it. The queen got into bed and the bed fit the queen perfectly, including the crown which she sometimes liked to wear to sleep. It was, without a doubt, the nicest gift that the queen had ever received. The king was very happy. He immediately called the apprentice from jail and made him a royal prince. He ordered a big parade, and all the people came out to cheer the little apprentice prince. And forever after, anyone who wanted to measure anything used a copy of the king's foot. And when someone said, "My bed is 6 feet long and 3 feet wide," everyone knew exactly how big it was. A king's foot. That is how this kingdom called 12 inches a foot, because it was as long as the king's foot. What was the problem in this story? There was a pretty big problem. Oh, the queen's bed was too small. You're right. But why was it too small? Yes, you're right. The king's foot was big. He measured using his size foot. That is much bigger than the apprentice's little foot. 6 apprentice feet is not going to be the same as 6 king's feet. So, the people in this story learned about why it's important to have a standard unit of measurement. Whenever they talked about a foot, they talked about a king's foot. Not an apprentice foot or not the queen's foot, but the king's foot. So everyone knew how long a foot was when they were measuring something. At home, compare your foot to the size of someone else's foot at home. Whose foot is larger? If you measure one end of the rug to the other with your foot, will it be more feet long than your older brother if he was to measure the carpet with his foot? See you next time.